people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
I think that anyone who's followed my career knows me even a little bit, knows that I'm always looking for the best and biggest fights possible. So if I thought Sandy was a chump, I wouldn't be chasing her down. I wouldn't be calling her out, and I wouldn't have put the effort in to make this fight. So I definitely rate her. You know, she's talented. She's at the top of her game right now. Like you said, she's coming off 2 wins, but that's against McCaskill and Terry Harper. Okay, I'm no McCaskill and I'm no Terry Harper, so I think 100%, and she knows this too, that I'm her toughest fight to date.
You have to give Mikaela Mayer a lot of credit because she's not just tooting her own horn, it's the truth. She is committed to providing the biggest fight she can. If she is successful against Sandy Ryan at welterweight and becomes a 2-division champion, she will in effect be reinstated on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, as this will be the 3rd world champion she will have taken a belt from. She took the WBO from a then-unbeaten Iva Brotnicka and the IBF title from Maiva Hamadouche, both at 130. This fight at 147, if she beats Sandy, that makes 3. 3 champions she took a belt from, making her a 2-division champion, and the long-standing rule that helps to govern the list: in defeating a pound-for-pound fighter, you become one yourself. Sandy ranks in at number 10.
The very bottom.
How she got there was she bumped off Terry Harper. Up until that fight, Terry Harper was ranked on the list for being a 2-division champion, a champion at super featherweight and a champion at junior middle. When she lost to Sandy at welter, she got bumped off the list per the rules that govern it. No fighter coming right off a loss, absent of a world title, is allowed to maintain a rank, and Sandy was integrated into the list per the rule that governs it. In defeating a pound-for-pound fighter, you become one yourself. That same rule will be in effect if Mikaela beats Sandy. And in tandem with her body of work thus far, she'll likely come in at number 7.
In the lower tier?
That's if Mikaela wins. If Sandy wins, she doesn't gain much ground because Sandy doesn't have the same body of work that Mikaela has. She hasn't beaten 3 world champions. She hasn't been a champion at multiple weights. She'll keep her rank, and this will qualify as a successful title defense, but it won't be enough to move her up.
Not by itself.
Sandy's gonna have to unify titles with some of the other champions at this weight to gain more ground. You have to wonder, what is Natasha Jonas up to? Why haven't Boxer gotten her a fight yet? And what about Ivana Habazin, the 2-time welterweight champion, currently in possession of the WBC title? What is she up to?
What are they doing?
2 of the 4 major titles in the welterweight division are over there on the Boxer side of things. Natasha's got one, Lauren Price has the other.
You have an outlier in Ivana Habazin, and then you have Matchroom's own Sandy Ryan.
I half expected to hear that either Lauren Price or Natasha Jonas would be unifying titles with Ivana Habazin. As it stands, no such announcement has been made, so what the hell is going on there?
I don't know.
Back over to Mayer versus Ryan. Those of you that have been following the channel and my coverage of this fight will already know that I have Mikaela Mayer winning. I think she's going to win a points decision. If and when she does, based on the network relationship that Top Rank and Mikaela have with Boxer, maybe we get a Jonas versus Mayer rematch, which doubles as a unification?
Maybe.
One thing's for sure, Mikaela Mayer is committed to the big fights with the somebodies. That's what her track record shows. That's what it showed at 130 pounds, not just with Iva Brotnicka or Maiva Hamadouche, but her domestic rival, Alicia Baumgartner. Mikaela helped to make that happen. The fight with Natasha Jonas upon moving up, that was another big fight with a somebody, and so is this one. So is the Sandy Ryan fight. So on the eve of this match, I am confident that if Mikaela Mayer wins, she's going to keep that same energy. She's going to pursue the other champions at this weight.
Are you starting to like Mikaela or something?
I never disliked Mikaela. Just thought Alicia Baumgartner would beat her, and she did. It is possible to like both Alicia And Mikaela.
I like Natasha, too. Is that going to be a problem?
I really like Natasha. And there's nothing written anywhere that says that you can't be a fan of all of these fighters that are fighting each other.
I am.
Seen all of Natasha Jonas's career since she went pro. The same applies to Mikaela Mayer. I've been a fan of Alicia for many, many years now. And even though they're rivals with each other, there's nothing written anywhere on any piece of parchment or papyrus that says I can't be a fan of all of them.
I like Sandy, too. She always looks angry.
I find that extremely attractive, and she is an extremely fun fighter to watch. She's an action fighter. So I like a lot of these fighters, and I actually support Mikaela in this endeavor because, once again, I trust that if she wins, she'll keep the same energy and pursue all the other somebodies at this weight. May the best woman win. In men's junior middle and middleweight news, former unified welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr. posted this image, a familiar scene from the popular show The Wire, with a small caption that reads, 154 to 160.
Oh, now it's the 160.
You know the scene. It's the scene where Omar's walking down the street. Everybody's hauling tail. He's got that shotgun in his trench coat. You know the scene.
He thinks he's Omar?
I'd say Terrence Crawford is more of the Omar in the situation than Errol Spence Jr. I'd say Terrence Crawford, you can liken him to Omar more than you can liken Errol to Omar.
That's not the point.
He's hinting at his potential comeback. He's hinting at his potential return with a slight difference, where initially everybody thought that Errol's going to come back and fight Sebastian Fundora for one or some of his alphabet titles. Now he's talking about potentially going to 160. That's new, because that's not what they were saying before. Could it be because this weekend, Danny Garcia will be challenging Erislandy Lara for Lara's middleweight title? Danny Garcia would be a common opponent between them.
Could that be the reason that Errol's now hinting at a move to 160? Could it be because 154 is too close to 147, and we all know Errol can't make 147? Can he not make 154?
That is, can he not make it comfortably? Would 160 be a much easier weight for him to make, depending on the opponent?
It's taken him a long time to make up his mind.
When they first proposed that Errol might fight Sebastian Fundora, I didn't believe it, and I still don't. The circumstances as they are, over a year of inactivity, separating from your longtime trainer, a guy who's been with you from the very beginning, from the amateurs into the pros, having not yet announced who's going to be training you moving forward. I was not convinced that Fundora fight would happen, and I'm still not.
Much less now that he's talking about potentially going to 160.
Is it because Errol and his team, what remains of them, view the winner of Lara versus Garcia as being more beatable than Sebastian Fundora? Is that why?
Because they're older.
Because they're not as statuesque, not as awkward as Sebastian Fundora, because one of them, at least one of them, you've beaten him before. You beat Danny Garcia, so you figure if he wins this weekend, you'll try to beat him again.
Is that why?
The whole time that I haven't been convinced that Spence would fight Sebastian, you know what crossed my mind? That behind the scenes, they're pulling strings to put Tim back in the ring with Sebastian. That let Tim take care of business with Bakram Murtazaliev. Maybe he keeps busy with Erickson Lubin in the interim if there's time. Then next year, they put him in the ring with Sebastian.
And Spence?
The Spence fight, the would-be Spence versus Fundora fight, maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe not.
We're in September, folks. Mid-September at that.
Half of it is gone. I haven't heard any new rumors or rumblings about Spence versus Fundora. All that remains of this year is October, November, and December. The news we've been hearing about what the PBC has planned for at or around that time, it doesn't seem to involve Errol Spence.
All we've heard is this and that about Gervonta Davis coming back, this and that about David Benavidez fighting on his undercard. That's what we've been hearing.
But nothing new. Nothing about Spence versus Fundora. So maybe, just maybe, that doesn't happen. And maybe, just maybe, Errol's targeting 160 for his comeback because it's a much easier weight to make and he can take on the winner of Garcia versus Lara, who perhaps he might look at as being more beatable than the statuesque and awkward and young and fresh Sebastian Fundora. I mean, he is certainly fresher than either of those two guys.
Laura's in his early 40s and Danny's in his mid-30s. Change of plans at the PBC, maybe. Change of plans. Maybe they planned on putting Errol in the ring with Sebastian and decided that's too risky. Let's find something else for him to do. I remember that Errol tweeted, then deleted, the next time we see him might be the last time we see him. That's back when the Fundora fight was the conversation. Things seem to have changed. Now, I don't know how much more Errol has to give to the sport of boxing, but if he were to come back, and he were to fight the winner of that fight, and he were to beat the winner of that fight, well, that puts to bed all those damaged goods narratives we've been seeing. From his fans?
He wasn't damaged goods when he beat Danny Garcia, and he wasn't damaged goods when he beat Ugas, but when Crawford beats him, oh, now he's damaged goods.
That's convenient.
So that if and when he comes back against the winner of Garcia versus Lara, if he wins, is he still damaged goods, or is he not damaged goods?
Which one is it?
We are thinking too far into the future. We don't know with any certainty here and now that that's what the plan is. I'm just speculating. I'm just bouncing ideas around, thinking aloud, because thinking's allowed.
Look at you using homonyms.
It's too far into the future. Assuming that's what the plan is, and assuming that Errol makes it there, hires a new trainer, perhaps beats the winner of Garcia versus Lara, whoever it is, those are a lot of assumptions. Errol Spence Jr. once said that he doesn't believe in tune-up fights. But in this situation, he desperately needs one, whether he likes it or not. And I wouldn't begrudge him for that if he took on a lighter touch to get back in the swing of things before a major fight. And I think that's what he should do.
Be stupid not to.
A year out from a career-altering beating?
Needs a tune-up.
You know that I didn't even really expect that Errol would return? I mean, he still seems like a quasi-retired fighter to me with his foot halfway out the door. But if he's eyeing a move to 160, I guess he's not done. Not yet. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, Brandon Figueroa posted this image to his Instagram stories, hinting at a December return on the undercard of Gervonta Davis's next fight, where presumably Brandon will fight, Jermell Charlo will fight, and David Benavidez will fight. David Benavidez, who we talked about in my previous video, was rumored to be a Jesse Hart fight. Jesse Hart sports professional record of 31 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 25 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 34 professional bouts. He got manhandled, he got ragdolled by Joe Smith Jr., but he didn't get stopped, he didn't get knocked out. He's a tough guy, big too. Hart used to campaign down there at 168 just like David. He was one of the bigger guys, one of the really bigger guys on the bigger end of the spectrum as far as super middleweights go. He has since moved up in weight, up to light heavyweight. And he's been up there for some years now, quietly keeping busy, keeping active, having since rebounded off that lopsided loss to Joe Smith Jr. Jesse is currently on a 5-fight winning streak. A Philadelphia native.
I don't hate this fight.
Jesse could make things interesting. He could, because he's got a lot more time in. More time in this division than David Benavidez does. This is a durable guy. He's been in there with Zerto. He's been in there with Joe. Neither of them could knock him out.
He's not inactive. He's been quietly keeping busy. He fought 2 times last year, and he's already seen action once. This one.
Opposite the ring, Daniel Aduku in April of this year, who he stopped. He's on a 5-fight winning streak, and he won 4 out of the 5 by way of knockout. Ow. So I don't really think this is a bad fight. It's not a bad fight per se, but because David Benavidez is free and David Morrell is free, and they fight on the same side of the street, they're roughly on the same schedule, they both saw action earlier this year, there is a question as to why didn't the PBC just make that fight? Why don't they make that fight between those two guys that are both their guys? Why are they doing this? This isn't bad, but that would have been better.
Maybe what they're doing is positioning their pieces on the board to pick up a vacant title. Maybe what they're doing is waiting for the winner of Better Beef versus Bivol to emerge. Then they're waiting for the winner of that fight to move up in weight, vacate their titles, at which point one will go to David Benavidez and one will go to David Morrell, so they can have 2 champions.
Maybe that's what they're up to. Maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know. Back over to David Benavidez versus Jesse Hart. If this is the fight that he ends up having, because right now it's just a rumor. It's just a rumor that's circulating. We don't know for sure that this is who David is going to fight. if it is, Jesse's about 6'3". He'll be eye level to David Benavidez. David won't tower over him. 77-inch wingspan. What I remember of Jesse? Jesse's a boxer. Jesse's a mover. I think what Team Benavidez are going for, if they do end up fighting Jesse, is another fight that looks like the fight they had with Demetrius Andrade. They want to fight a boxer. Somebody defensive that allows them to be more aggressive. That might be what they're thinking, what they're shooting for. A chance for David Benavidez to stay in character because he looked out of character, out of sorts with Alexander Vajdik. Didn't look like no monster. They look over at Jesse. They see a guy in his mid-30s, 35 years old. Not too old, not really. But he ain't that young either. Guy who used to campaign at super middleweight like David used to campaign at super middleweight. I don't think it's a bad fight. It's not a bad fight. Given that Jesse has been at this weight longer than David Benavidez, it's possible that he could make things interesting, though. If the Benavidez team have landed on this guy, it's because they want somebody they can push around, somebody they can bully, somebody they can be aggressive with. At 175, there are not a lot of guys like that. They're mitigating the risks. They likely landed on this guy with the Joe Smith Jr. fight in mind, knowing that stylistically, just based on styles, David has the right style for this guy. That's it. This is supposed to be a prelude, a keep busy fight en route to the winner of Better B versus Bivol, but I don't think David's going to go through with that fight. When push comes to shove and it's time to nut up and fight the winner, I don't think he's going to. To my surprise, former undisputed junior middleweight champion Jermell Charlo is said to be fighting on this show as well. Who against, I'm not sure, and will it be at junior middleweight? Conventional wisdom suggests that after a long hiatus like the one that Jermell has had from the junior middleweight division, that he's not going to come back at that weight. He's going to come back likely at 160, maybe even 168. That's where he last fought, where he lost to Canelo Alvarez. This guy hasn't made junior middleweight in something like 2 years, close to 2 years, I think. He hasn't made 154. His last fight, which was about a year ago, that was at 168 with Canelo. So the idea that after all that time he's going to drop all the way down to 154... I don't think so. Ahead of the Canelo Alvarez fight at super middleweight, I told you, I think Jermell is going to lose, like most people thought he was going to lose. And when he does, he's going to come back at middleweight. He might come back at middleweight. Maybe he builds himself up to a Carlos Adames fight for Carlos Adames's WBC title? I stand by that. They don't seem to have Carlos doing much of anything. They might use Carlos as the launch pad to reignite Jermell Charlo's career now that his stock is at an all-time low. The uninspiring performance that he put on against Canelo Alvarez, maybe he can put on a better one down the line against Carlios. So his next fight might be a rebound fight, little keep busy fight to get him back in the winner's bracket. Then after that, at some point next year, they put him in the ring with Carlos. Not a bad fight. Not a great one either, that they had two champions at the same weight and did nothing to make that unification match, the one with Carlos and Lara. Instead, we might get Carlos and Charlo. We'll see.